The fourth principle is transitions. It is to see if I move the load quickly and smoothly with moderate speed and pivots, or by being careful and moving more like a robot. The initial load we have will have an impact on the choice of techniques I will use. In the case where I have an object that is positioned low and that is light, or an object that is well positioned with somewhat weight, I will be able to use a much more fluid and rapid technique. If the box is at the right height for me, I could simply accelerate it to move it from one surface to another. There is no need here to use a super safe technique. What we're looking for is to preserve our energy. We can talk about the example of garbage collectors who throw objects all day long. If we forbade them from throwing objects, we could create a bigger problem by forcing them to walk twice as long. So it depends on the weight of the object and on the context. But if we have a load that is heavy, then it's worth using a safe work method that will require more energy to avoid the risk of injury from excessive effort. Here, we take the time to align ourselves well with the object, to place our feet, knees, hips, and shoulders facing the load. Then we lift it while keeping a point of support in order to increase its center of mass before lifting it completely. Then we move while always remaining aligned with the load. But we can imagine that doing squats all day long is not really realistic. It can get really tiring. So the safe technique, yes, it's a good technique, but you have to know how to use it and to use it at the right time in the right context. The pivot technique is usually used for shoveling snow, but also for moving objects from a surface to another. One of the ideas here is to avoid lower back torsion and knee twisting by rotating the body to keep the foot in line with the effort. This technique is usually used with light to moderate loads. Now we talk about the concept of fluidity. It's quite simple. We can imagine someone moving a large bottle of water that is filled a little less than halfway, and who has to move the bottle with different types of movements. What happens if I move the bottle with jerky movements? Water starts to stir. It's not really an ideal situation because the same thing happens in my body structures. If I have to move and I suddenly change direction, it will give some backlashes to my body, my muscles, joints, and tendons. But if we move the bottle of water quietly without jerking, we see that the water can remain perfectly zen, calm, and that's what we're going to look for during a manual handling. We're going to try and have movements that are fluid and without jerking, without sudden changes of direction. And to avoid making sudden changes in direction, it is sometimes worth taking the time to look carefully at the work situation that we have. What is the manual handling that I have to do? Then to plan my movement carefully to avoid unpleasant surprises along the way. So in summary, for the fourth principle, we have seen that there are different ways to do the transition, depending on the initial load that we will have. If I have a load that is light, I will be able to make a quick transition and take a much more direct method. If I have an initial load that is medium, using the pivot method might work out. And if I have an initial load that is heavy, so an object that is heavy or that is poorly positioned, I will want to take a safer, slower technique and move more like a robot. We have also seen the notion of fluidity, and we know that we must avoid jerky movements to avoid backlashes at the level of our body structures.